it's Tamsin here at Beginners Quilting Hub. I hope you're all well. Now, Missouri has sent me a brand new challenge to do over the next couple of weeks. And I thought you might like to come along with me on this little adventure to see kind of where we start and where we end up. So the challenge is to pick one of my favourite quilt blocks and create it in two very different ways. The first way should be a kind of more natural way to me. So using the colours that I might prefer and just making the block as I, probably would do it ordinarily. And then the second part of the challenge is to take that block and put a twist on it. Now the twist is my choice. I can either change up the fabrics, I can change up the method that I make it, I can just change up the type of block, I can change up the method of making the block just to make it something completely different and, maybe a little bit out of my comfort zone. So now I know most of you are probably going to think that I've chosen a star block, but for that very reason, I've decided to pick the log cabin block. Missouri Star has sent me some fabric. Now the fabric that they've sent me, I've undone it. I should have shown you before, but the fabric that they've sent me is the Bloom and Sew by Andover Fabrics. And this is a layer cake of 42 pieces. So I've got lots to choose from, and I can give you a little sneaky peek of what the bundle looks like. The kind of hero prints are this one and this one. And then all the other fabric in between kind of coordinates. So we've got lots of pinks and greens and yellows. My colour palette to a T. So I have gone through and chosen some fabrics that I want to use, and I want to show them to you, and you can let me know in the comments what you think of them. And the second bundle I haven't opened yet, and this is my wildcard bundle. So this is the fabric that I think I'm going to use for Log Cabin Block Part 2. And this is the Mixed Metallics by Robert Kaufman. And this is a bright bundle of fabrics. Let me hold them the right way. And it all features gold and metallics. There's some really pretty fabrics in here. I will lay them out and later in the video and show you those in more detail. And I'll also show you these fabrics that I've picked. Now, the first thing I want to do is just to create a normal log cabin block. There is so many ways that you can vary up a log cabin block, but I'm going to be using my own pattern to make a 6.5 by 6.5 inch unfinished log cabin block. But I'm going to make it a little bit different. So when I originally made this pattern, the idea was that you would use 3 colours. One for that centre piece, one for where the pink pieces are, and one for where those grey pieces are. But I'm going to do it a bit differently, and every little strip that you can see is going to be a different colour. The pinks are going to still be in the pinks and the reds, the pink and the red kind of coloured family, and the greys are going to be the blues and the greens. And each little strip that you see here, instead of doing all of the pinks pink, I'm going to do each individual one a different colour. So let's see how that turns out. I'm going to show you some footage now of the fabrics that I've picked out, and I will just hold up a few. So I've tried to pick the fabrics from the collection that are still in the same kind of part of the colour wheel. So we've got the green and the blues, so they're all going to complement each other, but hopefully they'll be slightly different just to give the block a little bit of a different look, a bit more interest. So block number 1 is going to be a 6.5 inch by 6.5 inch unfinished 6 inch by 6 inch log cabin block using these fabrics. So that's my first job. The second part of the video, I'm going to show you how I'm going to create a Manx quilted log cabin block. Now here's one that I made previously. I'm not sure if I've ever shown this block, but this is a Manx quilt block. Now it has a really cool 3D effect. So all of these kind of open up. Can you see that in the video? Yes, hopefully. And so it gives a really cool effect. Again, I'll try and put some footage in of this. So this is made with all Tana lawn fabric. So I may use this one, or I may create this block using these fabrics. We'll see how we get on, and we'll see how much time we've got. But for now, I just need to get this initial log cabin block made, cut down to size, and ready to go. And the assignment is to do both of them and take some really nice photographs with some Missouri Star kit and send it off to Missouri. So let's get going. These are the fabrics that I've chosen. and I absolutely love them. I mean, this is completely my wheelhouse, completely kind of my colours. Look, it's even coordinated with my jumper. I love them. I love these fabrics. They are beautiful. I love these little dots as well. They just give a little bit more texture, a little bit more interest. It's kind of squiggly lines. These are really pretty. So we're going to be cutting one strip out of each of these fabrics. And then this yellow is going to be the centre square. So the centre square, and then we're going to build the pink side of the fabric here. It's going to be this section. And then the grey section here is going to be these. The blues, the kind of bluey greens into the more true green. So that is going to be my log cabin. If you're interested in this pattern, I'll pop this in the description box below. It's one of my patterns, so it shows you step by step and gives you all the cutting requirements of how to make the log cabin. I'll also give you a quick flick through of the metallic fabrics. And when I lay these out and we pick what fabrics we're going to use, I'll try and remember to do some footage, but let's just take a little video snapshot now, so that if I do forget later, you can at least see what I'm working with. So these are mixed metallics. Oh, mixed metallics, Rainbow Colour Story by Robert Kaufman, and they are beautiful. I really hope the colour's picking up on the camera, but the metallic is a really gorgeous gold colour. This is the block, and this is probably easier to show you than me holding it up. Can you see how all these pieces are 3D? And this is all hand sewn. So I think it's really, really cool. It's a really cool block. This is all made with Tana Lawn fabrics. I think the first thing I want to do now that I've chosen my fabrics is actually to lay them in order from A through to M, and then just start cutting. So I think that's going to be the first order of the day. So let's move these to one side and these to one side. G, right. So this is in the pink. Right, and this is my centerpiece here. So let's get cutting. So there's my center square. I've got all the pieces cut. I'm really liking how it's looking. We're going to sew them together, and I'm going to start by sewing the center piece to this piece and then press that seam open, and they're going to join the next piece and press the seam open. I'm going to work my way all the way around, and then I will have my finished log cabin block. Such a cute block. Right, let's get sewing. I'm on the last round, so this is how it's looking. And I'm just going to add the final green to this side. Now, before I do that, I thought we could maybe discuss a couple of tips that I've got for getting log cabins to lay perfectly flat and nice and straight like this. Now, obviously your cutting is really important. If you don't get your strips cut accurately to start with, you're already kind of on a losing footing. Now, you want to make sure that you keep a really accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around, and you're trying to get your lines to be nice and straight, because if you go a bit wobbly, it's really quite noticeable in a log cabin block. Although, because the fabric's quite busy, it won't be as noticeable, but if you were maybe using strips of one colour, especially solids, it can be quite noticeable. So have a think about that. If you're not completely confident in your lines, maybe use quite a busy print so that it's not so visually obvious that you've got a bit of a wobbly seam. Now, it's also a really good idea to press every time you add another piece of fabric. Some people will use the seam rollers, and I think that's fine. That's better than nothing. But ideally, you want to be pressing these every time. And I press mine seams open. So you can see mine are laying perfectly flat. They're all nice and flat. If you happen to sew over a seam and, you know, this happens, just gently unpick it, flatten it down, you know, re-sew it if you need to. Just try and keep everything really nice and flat. If nothing else, it's just really satisfying to have a really pretty back. But I think it's coming along really well. Now, the other thing, which if you're anything like me, you'll forget which part you're on and you'll have to keep going back and count them. If you always keep your first piece that you've sewn on at the top, then you'll always work anti-clockwise, then you'll be fine. And let's add this last one on, shall we? So this is going onto this side. I really like this block, and this fabric is so cute. So this is my first block done. I really like the fabrics. What do you think? I really love the fabrics. We held them there so you can have a good look. It's got so many different prints in the collection. They all go together because they're part of a pre-cut bundle, but actually they look different enough to really give some interest. You've got the polka dots, you've got the little flowers, you've got these kind of leaves, you've got the squiggles. Yeah, I really like it. That is ready to just have a final little trim just to get rid of any of these little pieces, and then one final really good press, and then we can get this one photographed. And this is block number 1. Tick. The second block I'm going to do for the challenge is a Manx log cabin block. So I'm going to choose my fabrics and then I'll show you exactly how I'm going to make that one. Now I've gone ahead and chosen my favourite prints from the collection. There are a few more. I quite like this dark purple. Should we add that in? Let's add that in as well. So purple, blue, yellow, like a peachy colour. This gorgeous green. This is stunning. And then we've got these, and then into the purple, green, and the kind of fiery orange. So the next thing I need to do is grab a piece of scrap fabric that's going to be my backing. Now I want my block to be 6.5 inch, so I'm going to cut a piece at 6.5 inch square, and we're going to use that as our backing piece. Now traditionally Manx quilting is done using the measurement of your hand, but because I want this block to be a particular size, I'm going to do it to that size. Okay, it's time to move on to making our Manx quilt block. Now, I've been having a look at this and just reminding myself how I did it. So this is a picture of the back, and you can see all the lovely hand stitching. Now, the really nice thing about Manx quilting is you don't need to worry about your stitches being neat, because actually they're hidden because you have the folded fabric. So your stitches will be hidden underneath, and you're going to fold to a predetermined line. So you can get a really, really, really accurate, gorgeous block without having to worry too much about your stitches. The stitches are there to hold the fabric in place, which is quite a nice kind of freedom with this kind of block. Now this is a little bit bigger. This is an 8.5 inch block, and I want my block to measure the same as this. So I want a 6.5 inch block. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut myself a foundation piece, and I'm just going to use this one. So I'm going to use that. Am I going to use that? But I'm going to use the wrong size. So this is going to become my fabric base. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut myself, if I can find my rotary cutter, here it is, a 6.5 inch by 6.5 inch square. And once I've done that, I'll then show you how we mark our lines. Now, traditional Manx quilting is done using different measurements of your hand, and therefore everyone's quilt blocks will come out a little bit different. This yellow is going to be my centre, so that's going to kind of keep within the theme of the yellow. Now, the next thing I need to do is decide on the width of my fabric strips. If I just pull back the final piece on this one, which I've purposely not stuck down so that I can show you. So this pulled back measures 2 inches in width. As you can see, it's a nice size, but it makes quite skinny little logs, and I really like that. So I think we're going to do the same. Should we do them thinner? No, let's do them the same. Let's do 2 inches. This can be a test block. We can make more than one. And let's just see how this turns out. So I'm going to take all of these lovely fabrics and I'm going to cut a 2-inch strip just by the width of the layer cake. So I'll have 2 inches wide by 10 inches. I think these are 10 inches. Let's just double check. It's always worth double checking. Yeah, so they're 10 inches. Sometimes you get layer cakes and they're a little bit more, but this is a 10-inch square. So I'm going to cut myself, apart from the yellow one, which is going to be my centre block, I'm going to cut myself a 2-inch wide strip by the size of the layer cake. So 2 by 10. And then I will show you how to prepare the backing fabric. Let's start calling it the foundation fabric, because that in essence is what it is. So that is a foundation. I'm going to cut myself a what size square shall we do? Yeah, I'm going to do I think I'm going to do a 2 by 2 inch square. So let's cut that and then see how that looks. Because I'm making this project a little bit smaller, I want to make sure that I can use enough strips of fabric. So this is going to be my centre square. So that's going to go in the middle, and then we're going to build our Manx log cabin around the edge. Now I'm going to cut all of these strips, and then I will change the camera to be, so you can see over the top what I'm doing, how we prepare this, because the preparation of this is kind of key to the success with your block. So I'm going to cut these strips out now, and then we'll come back and I will show you what the next steps are. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold it on the 2 diagonals and give myself a nice crisp edge. Metallic fabrics are notoriously just a little bit thicker to handle, so I'm just going to use a seam roller because I do want a nice crisp edge. And sometimes finger pressing when you're dealing with a big piece like this doesn't quite cut it. So I'm going to fold as close and as accurate as I can on the 2 diagonals and just give it a little roll and get everything laying flat. Okay, so now when I open it up, I can clearly see that there's 4 lines, 4 triangles, and I can find the centre point. I want to put this square exactly in the centre, and I'm going to do that by using these lines. I'm going to make sure that the corners, let's bring you in a bit. I'm going to make sure that the corners of the 4 squares sit exactly on these folded lines. So this might just take a minute, just a little bit of fiddling to get this to sit where I want it to sit. And this is the part, get this bit right and the rest of it will all come good. Now once that's done, I'm just going to pop a pin. Oh, that's not a very good pin. So once that's done, look at my poor pin pot. Once that's done, I'm just going to double check it. I want a little pin. There we go. I'm just going to pop a pin into the centre, and that's going to hold that in place for me. Right, the next thing we're going to do now is we're going to fold all of these edges into the centre, one by one, folding them to make the lines. And this is going to be the lines that are going to effectively become our positions for our logs. So we're just going to fold in this edge, and again I'm going to use the trusty seam roller. You can just finger press, but just save myself a bit of time. Oh, that's going to be cute. So this is going to be the width of my logs. They're not actually too much thinner than this one, so I think it should work out okay. So I folded it once, and then I'm going to fold it again. So I folded this right up to the line here, I finger pressed or rolled, and then I'm going to roll it over and I'm going to do the next layer. So this should sit nicely on top of the one underneath. And I'm just going to roll it. And all you're doing is you're creating some lines for you to follow. So hopefully you can see that. So I've now got 1, 2, 3 and 4. And I'm going to repeat this on all of the sides. Now my strips are going to be much too long. The first strip actually needs to line up with this one, so I am going to trim these down. I'm just going to use a pair of fabric scissors because we don't need to worry about being completely accurate with this. So I'm just going to snip this down, and then I'm going to pin it in place on the top, and we're going to be hand sewing. And I'm actually, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to move this one out and put this one in. So all I've done is I've placed the strip with the nice side of the fabric facing the nice side of this, so right side to right side, and I've lined up, let's just make sure this is all sitting nicely. I've lined up the raw edge of this with the raw edge of this across the top, and I'm going to be sewing on the top, and then I'm just going to pop a pin through both layers like that. Now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sewing along here, and then we're going to trim. So we're going to cut off the excess. So actually while I'm here I could actually trim this down a bit more. There we go. And then this side we can trim that down a bit as well, can't we? So I'm going to get a needle and thread, and I'm going to do a hand stitch 1/4 of an inch away, because we still want to have a seam allowance, and it's going to be a rough 1/4 of an inch. If you want to, you can mark a 1/4 of an inch and draw a pencil line across it. So if you were going to do that, you would literally take your ruler and then measure in a 1/4 of an inch like that, and then just draw a line. I just grab a pencil, and then you just draw a line on your fabric like that, and then that is going to be the line that you're going to draw on. So I'm going to get some thread, and again it doesn't matter what colour thread because you're not going to see it. You are going to see it on the back, but it's a quilt block, so eventually this will be sandwiched up. So I'm going to thread my needle and I'm going to sew along here. I will put a knot at this end. In fact, we really do need to get this like lining up. There we go. Let's do this. I'm going to sew along this line, and I'm going to stop about 1/4 of an inch from the edge, and then I'm going to push my needle to the back. So I'm going to start at this end, and I'm going to sew along because I'm right-handed. If you're left-handed, you'll probably go in the opposite direction. And I'm just going to pull my knot to there, and then I'm going to do a simple running stitch, not too far apart but not too close together either. We want this to be an easy project. So, and I'm going to just kind of seesaw my stitches and do a few at a time. Right, we can take that pin out now. It's driving me mad already. Okay. Right, and then I'm just going to put the needle to the back. Right, I'm going to leave it still joined because we're going to come back and do something else with it in a moment. Now, all I'm going to do is fold this now, back to the first folded line. So if you can't see the line, you might just want to repress it. So I want the top edge of this fabric to line up with the first fold line. So I'm just going to push it up like that, and then I'm going to finger press it. Now, just because I'm stood here doing this, I'm just going to roller it just for the purposes of TV. But if I'm just sat doing this on my lap, I'm not going to bother. And that is your first log done. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees clockwise, and I'm going to put the next one in place. So the next one's going to be this one, because I'm just sort of going to get darker as I go, I think. Am I going to do that? No, I think I might do the reds and the pinks this side and the greens and the blues this side. So the next one's going to go on like that. So I'm going to pin this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin it through all 3 layers to hold it in place. And then I'm going to cut this bit as close to that earlier log as I can. And then cut this bit too. Not worrying if it's a little bit over, but just getting rid of some of that bulk. And then, oh, if I could pick my needle up. So I finished off here. So my last stitch was here. I folded it over. So now I'm going to start my next stitch coming up here. So I'm about 1/4 of an inch away again. And I'm going to just put some stitches along here. Through. Okay, and I'm going to turn that back to the top, take the pin out, and then we're going to fold it back. And again, we're going to fold this one back to that first line. And then I'm going to seam roll it. And again, you can finger press. It doesn't matter, we're going to be covering this off anyway. In fact, I'm just going to leave that. So, and that's what we're going to do. And we're going to keep going until we fill our whole piece up. It's going to be so bright. So I'm going to trim my piece of fabric down and trim this one down as well. Go. Now I'm going to lay it down and I'm going to pin it. And I'm going to grab my needle. Oh. Now I finished off in this corner here. So that's going to work well. So I'm just going to come back to here, about 1/4 of an inch away, and oh, probably in a bit further. Go, and away we go again. Now twist it back to the top, and I'm going to fold it over, and I'm going to meet that first fold, and then I'm going to press it down. And you see it's already starting to form, and you get this really cool 3D effect. So I'm going to do one more layer, and then I'm going to take this in and go and do some sewing on the sofa with the girlies, with the kids, and I'll come back and show you how I get on. This is one thing to mention. So once you come to this point and you're joining and you've got some of these rougher edges, you need to be lining it up not with these but with this. If you line it up with these, you may end up with a bit of a weird gap, and you'll end up with a rectangle instead of a square. So you want to purposefully lay this lined up with that original square, okay? And the same once you do the next row, you're lining it up then with this edge, not with these rough edges that kind of stick out. So, and you can actually cut these more accurately if you want to, but this is the quickest way I find to do it. And then I'm going to fold this up to the first line. Gosh, these colours are bright. There we go. And then finger press, just give it a little roll. Right, and that is my first kind of round of logs put in. So all we're going to do is we're going to twist it 90 degrees. And now I'm back to my pink. And then we can have a look at our completely finished block. Now, let me tell you, these blocks come together incredibly quickly. And they're just incredibly liberating because you don't need to worry about your stitches. It doesn't matter how wobbly my stitches are. So if you're not a particularly good hand sewer, or you don't do a lot of hand sewing, and you're maybe a little bit nervous about, you know, getting some nice straight hand sewing, this could be just the project, because you literally just pick up and sew. you know, I'm roughly heading in a straight line, but I'm not worrying. I'm not worrying about my stitch lengths not being equal. They're sort of roughly, but not, you know, nothing to worry about. And like I said, you can mark on here 1/4 of an inch if you want to, but it really doesn't matter. Just secure that. I'm going to trim that off, and then let's fold back our final piece. Now that final piece is obviously going to look bigger because it's going to contain a seam allowance ready for when you sew it to, you know, whatever you're going to be sewing it to. So the last round pieces will look thicker. And now is probably the time to give it a good press with an iron. Now I know that this backing piece is the exact size that I want my block to be. So this is 6.5 inches by 6.5 inches. So I'm just going to take a square ruler and I'm going to use my rotary cutter. I'm going to line up the two edges and I'm just going to trim it down as well. Now, obviously these will flap up a little bit, and actually what I might do for the purposes of the photographs that I need to take, I'm just going to put a little dab of glue in the corners with some fabric glue. Oh, just to keep these nice and flat for the photographs. So let's just put a couple of dabs of glue, and there we go, that's already looking better. And actually that's not a bad idea if you're making a batch of these and you're worried about, you know, the fabric flapping and getting stretched out of shape. Once you've, you know, put in all the hard work. Oh, this one didn't stick. Once you've put in all the hard work of creating them, use a little bit of glue. Now I'm using the Roxanne glue base tip. There we go. And any kind of like little meanders or, you know, imperfections is what makes these blocks so special. So let's have a look at the two blocks together and see what you guys think. So let's clear a space. So here we go. So this is block number 1. Now that was the top there. And we're finished. 2 log cabin blocks, completely different in style. This is the traditional log cabin using one of my own patterns, and this cutie little one is Manx quilt block, and I really enjoyed making both of them. This one on my machine and this one by hand, and I hope you've enjoyed coming along with me. Now I'm going to take some nice photographs and get this sent off to Missouri Star, and I hope that they like these too. I'll drop some little snapshots of the photos that I take on the end of this video so you can have a little peek, and hopefully you'll see them popping up across social media very soon. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in my next video.